horse thieves and horse breakers among the Chiricahua. Rarely did they go on a raid without her. Lozen's band returned to Ojo Caliente, and Victorio made one final appeal for their promised reservation. He immediately gave himself up to Colonel Hatch, the commanding officer in New Mexico. In a letter to his superiors in Washington, Hatch was adamant that the treaty should be upheld. In spite of his efforts, Hatch's orders were to return the Warm Springs Apache to San Carlos. When the troops arrived to enforce the order, Lozen, Victorio, and the Warm Springs Apache had gone.
As Victorio is being pushed off the reservation, there were mineral strikes, silver, near the towns of Chloride and Winston nearby. And it's quite possible that some of the local individuals who were interested in expanding the mining in that area were also interested in moving the Apaches off to open it up for mining. The settlers paid a heavy price, the military paid a heavy price. The people who were making money out of the deal, I'm not sure they paid a heavy price.
When Lozen and Victorio left Ojo Caliente for the last time, the army pursued them into the Black Range. The troops reported that on a number of occasions, Victorio yelled down to them to go away. He didn't want to fight. But by now it was clear to Lozen and the other Chiricahua leaders that the word of the White Eyes amounted to nothing more than lies, and they would never be left alone. They felt that they had no choice. Lozen and Victorio decided to go to war. In the fall of 1879, during the first stages of the Victoria War, the hit and evade tactics of the Warm Springs Apache taught the U.S. Army a lesson in modern warfare. According to the Chiricahua and Victorio himself, his little sister Lozen was one of the masterminds of their campaign. Outnumbered and outgunned, Lozen and Victorio led their pursuers over mountain ridges to wear them out, and then down into the desert to let them die of thirst. Where the Apache found water, the cavalry ate dust. Lozen knew every nuance of the terrain, and she was a master of the surprise attack. So when the time came to strike, they would set false trails and then bait the ragged army into their trap. Many of the cavalry officers, veterans of the Civil War, were used to facing up to their opponents and taking them head-on. But now they were fighting blind. The Apache were unseen and unheard until it was too late.
The Apaches were never interested in sacrificing men in a battle. If they could attack with some certainty of not losing any men, that's what they did. Leaders gained a reputation by having successful attacks without losing your personnel, without exposing them to risk.
The Warm Springs Apache came to rely on Lozen's intuition and tactics to keep them out of harm's way. But to prove herself in the eyes of her fellow warriors, she had to be willing to put her own life at risk.
You earned a leadership if people thought you made good decisions. This is how Victorio became a leader. Lozen, because of her power and her prowess, commanded the same kind of respect. And I think that's why Lozen's name has survived as a warrior woman among the Apache.
Many of the U.S. troops dismissed what they called Apache magic. But the Chiricahua who fought with her had no doubts. Lozen's ability to predict the movements of the enemy was their greatest advantage. They believed in her power because she got results. One first-hand Apache account of the war describes how time after time, when Victorio needed to know the location of the enemy, Lozen prayed to Lozen with outstretched arms and her palms open to the sky. As she turned slowly, her hands tingled when they pointed towards the direction of the enemy. The closer the adversary, the more vivid the feeling.
These Apache grew up in this environment. They were incredibly attuned to sound, sight, smell, feel. Things that we miss as we grow up in our air-conditioned houses. And if all those combine to tell you things, is that power?
Going done. Is it done? Because it is long, but did it in done the she, which I can his good Zuguka, National Guns to a habit.
Before going on the warpath, the powers of medicine people such as Lozen and Geronimo would be called on in their spiritual preparation for war. Rituals such as the application of war paint instilled fearlessness in the Chiricahua warriors. From their enemies' point of view, this made them incredibly dangerous. Harlan, what goes into the powder that makes up this war paint?
It's a red rock that usually shed, fine powder at the base of it. Well, it's very hard to get this type of mineral.
I think what a lot of us don't understand is that this wasn't just used for makeup, right? There was a whole psychological and spiritual element to this and a ritual about it before they went into war.
That's correct. It protects you, and also signify that you had actually become a warrior. It's a sacred paint that's been used hundreds of years by the Apaches that have become warriors. When you apply this war paint, it has to come from the left all the way to the right. It actually has to do with Mother Nature, the planet itself, because the rotation of the Earth turns that way, clockwise. And we have to, start from the left to right, make sure that we come back safe without any injuries.
So this is like a shield?
Correct. This is like a shield because once this sacred paint is put on you, you're supposed to come back.